Well, welcome back to A Daily Walk, the Tuesday edition. So glad to have you here with us, and hope that you're enjoying these Daily Walk devotions. Encourage, if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave us a comment, you can subscribe. Perhaps you can share it with somebody else that could be encouraged. We're so blessed by the feedback that we've received in recent days that you're being blessed by the Word of God, and of course that's a blessing to our team here at A Daily Walk. Well, today we pick up in Mark's Gospel, the 11th chapter. And an important time in the life and ministry of Jesus, as this is the final week leading up to the cross. And it begins in Mark chapter 11 with a triumphal entry. It says, "Now when they drew near Jerusalem to Bethphage and Bethany at the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples, and he said to them, 'Go into the village opposite you, and as soon as you have entered, you will find a colt tied, on which no one has sat. Loose it and bring it. And if anyone says to you, why are you doing this? Say, the Lord has need of it, and immediately he will send it here.'" Jesus is now, as I said, 1 week away from the crucifixion. And for the first time, he's going to make a triumphal entry into the city. And so he tells two of his disciples, as we read, "Go into the city and retrieve the colt of a donkey and bring it here to me." And then he was going to make his entrance. Now, there's a few things to consider there. First of all, Jesus wasn't just taking a tour of Jerusalem on the back of a donkey. He actually was fulfilling biblical prophecy. For according to the book of Zechariah, the Lord had declared long before that the Messiah would be revealed and he would be riding on the colt of a donkey. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of years before it ever happened, Jesus is now fulfilling this prophecy spoken by Zechariah. Now, it must have been interesting for the disciples to have these instructions of Jesus. Hey, just go into the city and just, bring the donkey back. And if anybody says, hey, why are you taking it? All you have to say is this: the Lord has need of it. And they'll let the donkey go. That phrase right there, the Lord has need of it. I've always meditated on that passage and thought, when the Lord speaks to me or speaks to you in some way and says, hey, I have need of this, or I want to use this, is it available to him? Am I saying, oh, wait, hey, that's mine, you can't use it? Or am I saying, hey, this is for the Lord, this is for the glory of the Lord. If the Lord has need of it, if the Lord wants to use it, Lord, use it. It's all yours anyway. And so they retrieve this donkey, this colt. No one has ever ridden on it before, and they bring it back to Jesus, just as they had been commanded to do. And verse 4, so they went their way, they found the colt, once again, by the door outside the street, they loosed it. Notice verse 5, some of those who stood there said to them, "What are you doing, loosing the colt?" And they said, just as Jesus had commanded, so they let them go. Jesus anticipated that they probably would question, what are you doing taking our donkey? And so when they went, they said, Jesus has need of it, the Lord has need of it. And they said, okay, that's fine. And they let the donkey go. Jesus already knew what was going to happen before it happened, which is, again, just fascinating to consider. So they bring the donkey back, and here's where things get interesting in verse 7. It says they brought the colt to Jesus, and they threw their clothes on it, and he sat on it, and many spread their clothes on the road, and others cut down leafy branches from the trees and spread them on the road. As Jesus is now at the top of the Mount of Olives, preparing to come down the Mount of Olives and then over the Kidron Valley and then up to Jerusalem, the disciples take out their outer garments, and they place it over the donkey for him to sit on. Others are taking their outer garments and they're laying it on the road for him to walk on. This was symbolic in a sense of saying our lives are submitted to you. We are surrendering to you. It's basically an outward demonstration of their recognition of Jesus being the king. This is something actually that you also observe in the Old Testament. When kings would come to the throne, they would lay out their garments, and in essence, the king would walk over them, and they were saying, we are submitted to you. Friend, I wonder if today you're submitted to the king. Have you surrendered to Jesus? Are you allowing him to lead and guide and direct your life? Is he your king? Do you welcome him? Well, that's what this crowd did on this particular day. In addition to taking off their outer garments and laying them out for him to walk on, it says they also cut down leafy palm branches and they began to wave them. That is why so often, this is what we call Palm Sunday. This is the beginning of the week, Palm Sunday, and you'll see the branches come out. Why do people have these palm branches? Because it's Palm Sunday, the day that Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey and revealed himself to be the Messiah. And he actually accepted from the crowd, as we'll see in a moment, their adoration and their recognition. Well, it says, those who went before, verse 9, and those who followed, they cried out, saying, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the kingdom of our father David that comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. As the people took down these palm branches and began to wave them, they ended up quoting the messianic psalm, Psalm 118, that refers to Jesus as the Messiah. And it's interesting to me because the word Hosanna means save now. Save now. Be our king. The only problem was Jesus had not come to save them from Roman occupation, which is what they were hoping for, that Jesus would remove the Romans and be their king and lead them to victory. But rather, Jesus was coming to save them from their sins. They didn't quite understand that. In fact, at the beginning of the week on Palm Sunday, people were saying, save now, Hosanna. But at the end of the week, some of these same people would be saying, crucify him. We won't have this man to reign over us. Because they didn't understand that his first coming, he had to come as the suffering Messiah before he would come as the reigning King of glory. Oh, be sure, he's going to come as the reigning King of glory, but first he had to come and suffer and die before he comes to rule and reign. The other thing that's interesting to point out is that normally when a king would come to conquer in power, he wouldn't be riding on a donkey. A donkey was not an animal that you would take into battle. And for understanding reasons, you know that would be dangerous. Rather, you would come on a conquering, like a horse, a charger, a big stallion, if you would, a horse for battle. But when kings came in peace, they would ride on donkeys. And so the first time that Jesus goes up into Jerusalem, verse 11, into the temple, he looked around at all the things. The hour was late, and he went out to Bethany with the 12. The first time Jesus came, he came to bring peace. He wanted to bring people into a place of peace with God. The first time he comes to make peace. But folks, listen, the Bible gives us a much different picture on the second time Jesus comes. He will come to make war against all of his enemies. I pray today that you have received the King of Peace, that you have surrendered your heart and your life to him, that you've said, Jesus, whatever you have need of in my life, it's yours. I'm available to you. You know, the Lord isn't so much looking for talent or ability. He's looking for availability. Be available for Jesus today. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.